I was actually going through a few notes, ready to make a new video, and something happened yesterday, which September 10th was yesterday, and it really shocked my house, and my wife brought it to my attention. It was very disturbing. Another pastor in the mainstream eye has committed suicide, and this hits heavy for one reason. We didn't really know what church he was from or anything like that, so we wanted to check out his Facebook page, and there were so many underlining cries for help on his Facebook. It was just remarkable that nobody in his congregation, maybe some did, but I can tell you that not enough people expressed how much they actually cared to this guy, this poor man who had just ended his life because he thought there was no other way. And of course, you can make the argument and say that he was battling spirits and all of that, and that's 100% true. But with pastors, a congregation that cares, a congregation that extends a hand and says, "Hey, pastor, we're here for you, we're on board with your vision," can stop things like that. Those thoughts, those notions, they're not always as drastic as taking your life, but they are always serious. So I got to thinking about my situation. I work here at a church in Fairmont, West Virginia. I have a senior pastor and executive pastor that I answer to. And I consider both of them my friend. So that being said, their well-being is on my mind at all times before we get to the professional aspect of it. But I can see these guys sometimes being sucked down and sucked dry of their motivation or their willingness to maybe speak the truth, like a pastor should say, because of the feedback they're going to get from a congregation or anybody on social media or anything like that. Now, I am very happy to say that all of the pastors at my church speak and preach the uncompromising word of God. So therefore it is truth. If you don't believe that, this isn't the video for you. So you are free to just mosey on somewhere else. But we preach the uncompromising word of God in this church, and our pastors are really good at that, especially our senior pastor and our executive pastor. But if we as congregation members don't understand that sometimes these people need lifted up, then we're missing the mark. Any church that does this, we're eventually going to have to hear about a pastor wanting to resign, a pastor that's burned out and needs to go on a very long sabbatical, or, God forbid, a pastor that does something like this pastor in the mainstream I did the other day and harm himself or take his own life. Being a pastor, I never really, as a child, realized how hard of a job it was, but my father in my teenage years into my young adult years was a pastor. It was a small country church, and I realized then that pastorship was pretty difficult. You had to deal with some things, but being here in a church that ranges anywhere from 300 to 500 people on a Sunday, then that's where you get into this job is super difficult. And you have to fall in line with the pastor's vision, or you're going to rebut everything he does. Whether you think you're doing that or not, that's exactly what you're doing. So I wanted to share, as working with these pastors, I wanted to share a few things that all pastors have to deal with. This is a part of the video that's about to get really blunt and truthful So here we go. All pastors on a daily basis deal with members of the congregation. That's how it happens. But unfortunately, 70% of dealing with that part of the congregation is just filled with absolute ignorance and absolute stupidity. Not literal, just wanting to see something. They just want to see something burn. They're destructive people. But I know that they're the nicest people you could ever meet. But they just want to watch the world burn. They're like an arsonist that watches things go up in flames. And our pastors have to deal with this stuff on a daily basis. Well, I agreed with everything you said on Sunday, but I don't agree with this one part. No, you agree with all of it, or you don't agree with any of it. That's just the deal. You can't nitpick what you like and leave what you don't, because in all seriousness, that is what's convicting you, and you're going to have to answer for it one day if you don't get that figured out. And this kind of ties in with the last point. Pastors have to deal with middle school drama. And yeah, we're all adults here, but they have to deal with this drama all the time of people wanting to get in verbal arguments with each other, or wanting to fight, verbally, wanting to bash another Christian in the church, and just all the time, and as every pastor has to deal with this, as every pastor has to deal with unneeded drama and just a level of ignorance that is just astounding at sometimes. I've seen this when my father was a pastor. I've seen this at my current church. I've seen this at a lot of churches that I've traveled to. Just people who are in it for the drama. They're in it for the attention. And eventually this will lead right up the ladder to your senior pastor. And the last person that needs any of this is your senior pastor. One of our staff pastors brought up a good point the other day. He was talking about something that Kenneth Copeland said about shepherds and sheep. As we all know, that pastors are shepherds. In the Bible references pastors as shepherds, and they lead their flock to where they think they need to be. They lead them in vision. So we have this epidemic in the church right now where the flock is infested with goats and wolves, and a lot of people will preach, wolves in sheep's clothing, and they're here to attack the sheep. Well, that's true sometimes, but their main goal is to attack the shepherd, because without the shepherd, the flock is spread out and led astray. So the main goal here for the enemy, the main goal here for the people that the enemy is influencing in your church, that these pastors have to deal with on a daily basis, is to harm the shepherds, to get them out of the equation. And without that, then the people are led astray, and in their minds, that church is just going to fall in on itself, and there will be no other church. So I say all that to say this. This is just a reminder that we have to lift our pastors up at all times. Go and buy your pastor and his family a lunch or a dinner. Get them gift cards, just write them a card. It ain't got to be anything that involves money. It just needs to show them that you appreciate them. You need to do this a lot. And this is something where I have laxed as a staff member. I need gratification to say, hey, you're doing a good job. But at the end of the day, I need to be doing the same back to them. I need to be telling them, hey, that sermon you preached was spot on. This vision that you're casting, I'm on board with it. Because If I'm not on board with the vision of my pastor, then I am in the wrong place. End of story. I am in the wrong place. I need to find another church. So let that be it. Let that be something you pray about. Do you agree with the visions that your pastor is casting? Do you feel like you're in this season of maybe, I'm in a transitional season, and maybe God is not going to keep me here long? A telltale sign of that is if you don't agree with your pastor's vision, and this is an ongoing thing to where you really don't, necessarily agree with all the things he says, even though this is probably a good guy or a good lady, you're in the wrong place. You're just in the wrong place. If it offends you every time your pastor gets up to speak or say something that is biblically truthful, then you need to go find another place to be. The spirit of offense is rabid in churches right now, and we need to be on the watch, and we need to be lifting our pastors up in prayer. We need to be always holding them up. I always think about Moses having his arms raised so the children of Israel can win the battle. We need to be like that with our pastors at all times. We need to pray more of God's wisdom, more of God's protection upon them, because of all these sheep and wolves in the flock. So take time out of your day. Make this a normal part of your day. Pray for your pastors. Pray for your leaders. But mostly pastors. My heart is really burdened for pastors right now. So lift them up in prayer. Tell them you appreciate them. Tell them that you love them. If you do that, you're going to see the enemy be crushed in a way that he's never been crushed before, because he's after the leaders of our churches. So lift your pastors up in prayer.